Welcome back. And we earlier said that upon an invitation from the French President Emmanuel Macron, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi have traveled to France in Paris, where he attended the summit for a new global financing pact, and amongst a bouquet of world leaders and officials. And also he participated in a two-day important summit. He also gave a speech, and that summit aimed at overhauling the structural imbalances in the global financial system. And with us over the phone live is Dr. Mustafa Tamaam, a professor of political science. Good morning, Dr. Tamaam.
Good morning to you.
First of all, how do you see the timing of the summit?
Well, actually, the timing is very important. As we observe now, the world is facing serious economical and political problems, and this have a negative impact on the whole world, on the whole countries in the worldwide as a whole. And certainly, in addition to also to the problems of the climate changes, you see. So all these problems combined, you see, need to be solved, and certainly the summit is taking a further step to solve these important issues that probably face and challenge the worldwide economies.
Right. On the sidelines of the summit for the new global financing pact, he met with several world leaders. On top of all, he met with the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, and there was, of course, a meeting that was held between him and the Crown Prince, and he also met with the head of state, an African president also, that he met South African President Cyril Ramaphosa and had a meeting with him, and other several world leaders. If you like to shed light over the encounters of President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi with several world leaders on that particular summit.
Well, certainly the meeting which was held with Saudi Arabia is very important because the ties between Egypt and Saudi Arabia are very strong and since a long time in various aspects, certainly. And certainly, both countries, Egypt and Saudi Arabia, play a major role in the Middle East and in the worldwide economy. So certainly the coordination and certainly having the exchanging of ideas was very important in this respect. Regarding African countries, certainly, as you are aware, the President has given a lot of attention to African countries since he assumed office. We had, if you remember, since a week ago, we had the meeting of the African Development Bank, which took place in Sharm el-Sheikh, which also highlighted on solving a lot of issues that face the African countries. On the other side, also, Egypt is giving a lot of support and importance to African countries in order to elevate their economy, and also in the area of climate changes, because certainly a lot of African countries suffer from these climate changes and do not, and unfortunately they don't have the technology and the know-how in order how to encounter these problems.
Right. Earlier yesterday, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi gave a very important speech where he talked about several policies and the situation of world economy, and he talked about how the world handled crises like the pandemic and overcame that, and also how we are trying to handle the economic crisis, the repercussions of the Russian-Ukrainian war, and a lot more. If you'd like to elaborate over the President's speech that he gave yesterday.
Well, certainly, this was a very important speech which he gave the experience to see of Egypt, how it faced its economic problems with the economic reforms which were done in 2016. And certainly with these economic reforms which took place, we were able to meet the challenges, and we were not affected negatively as other countries had been affected, because we adapted the very professional program since 2016. On the other side, You see, the president is giving a lot of importance about cooperation between countries and exchanging of ideas and exchanging of technologies in order to face all these challenges. And this is very, very important.
Right. How does this participation of President Sisi in an important summit like that reflect Egypt's pivotal role in the region and its status as a powerhouse?
Certainly, Egypt plays a major role. You see, this is a message also to the world community about the importance of Egypt. You see, as a strategic partner. You see, Egypt is probably the coordinator between African countries, you see, and Europe and other countries, you see, in order to upgrade and provide support to African countries. And also it's considered a strategic location between Europe and the Far East and countries like China and other countries in the Far East, you see. So certainly, and certainly it's playing a role also, it's an important role in the Arab world, you see. So certainly this is very, very important. It reflects, all these messages reflect the importance of Egypt.
President Sisi also included a very important topic in his speech yesterday where he talked about climate change, and he stressed the importance of developing countries should adapt to creative ideas to face the climate change. He said that Egypt, and he talked about Egypt's experience and said that Egypt was keen in carrying out clean energy projects, and he elaborated on that. We need to focus also over Egypt's taking heed to erecting clean energy projects in a very short time here and succeeding in that. Talk to us about Egypt's experience in clean energy projects.
Certainly, this is also a very important point because we had the conference, as I mentioned, in Sharm el-Sheikh, COP27, which put a lot of recommendations in order to face these climate changes. Unfortunately, the worldwide community in the past didn't take this matter as serious as it should be taken. But we have evidence of probably dramatic and dangerous climate changes, probably in a lot of countries worldwide. You had fires and you had thunders, and you see, which destroyed probably a lot of houses and probably caused the immigration of a lot of a lot of citizens had to leave their houses, you see, in order to survive. You see, the situation was very, very critical. Certainly, Egypt has a lot of experience in this respect, and we are probably moving now towards the clean energy. And I'll give you an example. Now, Egypt will be encouraging the manufacturing of the electric cars. You see, cars which will be the source of power will be electricity. So certainly, this will be a very, very important issue. On the other side, also, there are a lot of projects in various areas in order to preserve the climate and take these factors into consideration.
Right. Could you please shed more light on the agenda of the two-day summit? What were the main important topics that were tackled generally in that summit in Paris?
First one was the certainly economic cooperation, and number two is facing the challenges that the worldwide community meets. That's the second one. The challenges are not only economic. As you just mentioned, now we have the Ukraine-Russia war, which is turning to a very serious situation now. And certainly the cooperation between and negotiations between probably these two parties will solve, because war will never solve the problem. See, both sides will be losing. It's a lose-lose situation. So certainly the political arena and the political stability, climate changes were very important, and certainly economic factors which we have been discussing now, which face the worldwide economy, are considered a top priority because a lot of countries now suffer from these issues.
Right. How does Egypt participating in summits like that, and especially strong participation like President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi's participation and his several meetings with African leaders and with Arab leaders and with French President Emmanuel Macron is going to invest to attract foreign investment to Egypt? On top of all is the European investment.
Definitely, certainly. We had a very important event which took place before this summit, which was the issuing of a new investment law. You see, this will encourage a lot of investors locally and from abroad to come and invest in Egypt in order to eliminate certainly a lot of obstacles probably that they meet. On the other side, Egypt is giving its experience to African countries in various aspects, you see, and probably a lot of countries, as I mentioned, they have a lack of human resources, certainly, and Egypt could provide the training and know-how to upgrade the human resources of these African countries. On the other side, the technology, as I mentioned, probably Egypt has a lot of experience in various areas. So certainly, we can transfer this experience to these countries. And the president is giving a lot of importance to African countries, which were neglected, unfortunately, in the past. So all these aspects of cooperation certainly will be very, very important in this summit.
Right. The world leaders and the whole power balances, the power countries are directing their focuses towards Africa, the African continent. And towards the Middle East. So how do summits like that going to probably enforce the power of the African continent to attract more investment and probably overcome the world food crisis, for example, the economic crisis, the energy crisis? How is that going to melt the frozen ice, as they say? In what way?
What you said is very important. Probably by highlighting the chances and the importance and the resources that African countries have in the field of agriculture, in the field of minerals, in a lot of other fields, you see. By focusing and giving an idea about the chances that investors could go to these countries and invest is very, very important. And certainly Egypt plays an important role in this respect by highlighting the chances that there are in African countries for investors in order to come there and probably start their business. On the other side, certainly Egypt also, as I mentioned, would be very keen to cooperate, to provide technical and managerial support to the African countries which probably lack these two factors. On the other side, certainly there will be obstacles. We have probably bureaucracy, we have lack of finance, and certainly these countries will be having a strategy in order to overcome these obstacles in order that they can reach the objectives that they want to reach to.
Right. How do summits like that, I mean, interaction between African countries and European ones and the gathering of sharing experiences and also sharing a vision for the future, going to sort out the conflict of interests, going to sort out the food crisis that is situated as a result of the military confrontations, economic confrontations. These are issues that needed to be resolved, especially with growing challenges like climate challenges, climate change challenges, like the economic challenges and things like that.
Certainly, I agree with you. This is a very, very important point, that conflict between the countries should be solved. And unfortunately, the Sudan crisis is escalating, you see, and certainly this causes a lot of disequilibrium, not only for Sudan, but for the African continent. Other countries also suffer from these conflicts. And certainly, Egypt is playing a vital role, you see, in solving these conflicts. I'll give you an example that Egypt has sent a lot of, gave a lot of know-how and experience, and probably assisted in trying to solve the Sudan crisis. But unfortunately, other countries worldwide, like United States and Saudi Arabia, have played a major role in this respect. But unfortunately, the Sudan crisis is escalating, and certainly it's very, as you mentioned just now, in order to have political and economic stability, we have to have a solution to solve these conflicts, because no one probably will invest in these countries where we have problems and people fighting with each other. And certainly the country suffers, the citizens are suffering dramatically. So certainly no one will be thinking of going to the places where are political disequilibrium.
Right. A final question. The summit aims at building new consensus on fighting, like we earlier said, poverty, curbing planet heating emissions, and protecting nature. So how important is that going to be enforcing those particular issues?
This is a very important point you just raised now. Certainly, after we had the recommendations of the conference and the results which were derived from there, I suggest that there will be an action plan in the committee in order to start putting the ideas and recommendations into action. And certainly, there will be a lot of problems and obstacles that we're going to face, you see, when implementing all this. So certainly a committee will be formed and put recommendations, and will have the authority to eliminate and recommend the elimination of obstacles, probably bureaucratic obstacles, financial obstacles that might face the implementation of these recommendations. This is very, very important, because unfortunately when you have a conference, you see you have recommendations, and then when we go back, everything goes back to square one, nothing is done. But certainly if we have an action plan, certainly this will help a lot in order to put these recommendations into reality.
Right. Finally, Dr. Mustafa Tamaam, Professor of Political Science, would like to thank you, sir, talking to The Breakfast Show. And we're going to go to a short break, and we'll come to continue The Breakfast Show, so stay with us.